Former notorious gangster Allan Heyl recently released his memoir that gives an honest and detailed account of what really happened back in the 1980s when he and Andre Stander were jailed for their mad bank robbery sprees they've committed over the years. Now, this fast-paced, this raw and witty book is titled Bank Robber, My Time with Andre Stander, and its author, Allan, joins me now in studio this morning to tell us more about this offering. Allan, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, a short while ago, you and I were just having an off-camera conversation about how you're not so proud of the contents of this book. But first, let's get to how and why you got into the business of gangsterism and robbing banks.
Read the book.
That I will.
It's actually a very long story, and it started off way back in 1972. When I had dropped out of college. I'd been a student at Teachers College, and then I joined a very large chain store organization. And at that stage, my life was basically characterized by the fact that I had developed, from my high school days, I developed chronic depression, to the extent that I used to be rendered totally incapable of getting out of bed for occasionally, a week at a time, not getting out of bed to bath or to eat. And, those days it was a case of, the most sage advice that I used to get from professionals was to pull myself together, to snap out of it. Snap out of what? I didn't know what it was that I was supposed to snap out of. I just knew that I very often used to live in a very, very dark place, which I, in the book, refer to as, often ending up on the dark side of the moon, lost and bewildered and floundering emotionally. And eventually I got fired from my job. And it's a long, complicated story that reached a conclusion whereby I had decided that I was not going to go home and face the music about having been fired. Yeah. I slithered matric, I dropped out of college, I've been fired. I'm on a slippery slope to, some form of calamity. And I was living in a residential hotel in Wynberg in Cape Town. And I was out of funds. I was told that I had to pay up on my rental, or I was going to be put out on the streets.
That's where you felt your world crashing down, and hence you decided to go for this route.
Well, I never decided. It was circumstances that got me to be walking past the little one-man bank one morning. And I happened to glance into it, and as I walked on, and this is the danger if we allow our thoughts to be dominated by external factors, it can affect us in a very negative way. I took the image of that little bank home with me that night. Yeah. And I started fantasizing about the possibility of me robbing the bank. Even though I knew it was very, very, very wrong, we come up with these justifications. It's a form of sophistry. We justify what we know is wrong in such a way that it appears to be okay. And I came up with all sorts of justifications. I walked in one morning without a firearm. I used my finger tucked in behind my coat, and I ran away from the bank. And that's how the whole process starts.
And you also talk about how the events as narrated in this book are not so romanticized or perhaps exaggerated. Talk to us about some of the construed version that you've heard of and have seen.
Oh my goodness, that in itself could be contents of a book. Jeez. All the various myths and thumbsuck that has been taken as being fact. Like apparently Andre and I one day we robbed a bank, and then we returned to the same bank apparently, because we heard that the bank manager was bragging about the fact that we had missed the loot, which was in a box. I mean, you can ask yourself, if you've just robbed a bank and you return to it, what do you expect to find there waiting for you? Loads of police cars, and that's just one of the myths that's developed. over the years.
How did you meet Stander?
I met him in prison. I subsequently ended up several years later with a second conviction, serving 15 years for having robbed 5 banks in Pretoria.
Jeez.
And by the time Andre arrived at the prison, I was really well advanced in my ideas and plans and strategy to escape from prison. So, you know, 2 convicted bank robbers with similar tastes in music and literature. We differed on rugby. I mean, he was a Bulls supporter and I was a Province supporter for my pains and my sins. And, but we recognized that there was an affinity between the 2 of us, which, if we had allowed it to develop, would end in a calamity. And it's a long story, but we did eventually manage to escape.
Yeah.
And then we embarked on a series of robberies, the likes of which I often, whilst writing the book, I had to often sit back and give myself a reality check to say, did we really do this? You know, like on one particular day, we robbed 4 banks one morning in quick succession.
Jeez, man.
And we were pursued by a helicopter. Well, I mean, that is the stuff of seriously bad fiction, but it was reality. You know, the contents of the book beggar belief.
Yeah, I mean, 34 years later, you're now looking back, you're now reflecting, and I'm sure you do have regrets, eh?
Oh, major.
What are some of them?
Major. Well, I spent 27 years in prison, and I've got nothing to show for it. You know, in terms of the harm and the damage that it's done to me and to friends and family, that's the major regret, obviously. But the major regret actually is the fact that I've wasted talents and abilities and I have achieved nothing.
All right, where can you get hold of this book?
It's just recently been released, so it's in the process of ending up in you know, all the usual suspects.
All right. Thank you so much, Allan. We appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bank Rob-Up, My Time with Andre Stander, a memoir of a former notorious gangster, Allan Heyl. We thank him for his time. Well, you can also join us for our viewer slot every month, and all you have to do is send us some of the books that you're currently reading or have read, and by doing that, you can find yourself joining us live in studio for our Sunday book review feature to talk about some of your favorite books. And all you have to do is simply to email, to Instagram, or tweet us a picture and a relevant caption of your pick of the week, must read for 2018, your current read, and the one you were hoping was going to be great but turned out to be rather disappointing. Use our social media platforms. We are at Morning Live SABC on Twitter. We are on Morning Live on Facebook as well. And of course, you can use that handle at Morning Live SABC. And email is morninglive@sabc.co.za. All right, let's go for an ad break now.